All right, so welcome to our October Artist Talk from MacRostie Art Center. My name is Katie Marshall. I'm the director here, and we're really excited to welcome you all to this event. And we're very glad we could have John Zasada here to speak with us about black ash trees and about some of the pieces in his exhibit. So it should be a great talk. And we've just bear with us with any technical difficulties as always on Zoom. You never quite know what's going to happen, but we're going to be trying to share a PowerPoint presentation with everyone. And then John's going to talk through and do a little show and tell with some of the pieces that he has and some of the materials he's gathered. So that's kind of the plan for the evening,
Emily,
and there'll be plenty of time for
we
questions.
have our picture.
So for now, I'm going to go ahead and if you're able to mute yourself, do that. Otherwise, I'll kind of go through and mute people as well, just so we don't have a kind of the background noise while we're going here. You're welcome to leave your video on if you'd like, or you can shut that off for the kind of the presentation part of things and then turn it back on when we get more into the Q&A. Let's see.
Oh, we can take the.
So let's see, I gotta not mute John.
There.
Maybe that'd be the best one.
Just checking here to make sure I got everybody. Okay. Great. All right. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we have a presentation that Brian Palak from the Forest Service put together. Forest Service, is that right, John?
Yep.
Yep. He wasn't able to be with us tonight, but he graciously shared a presentation that he has put together on the black ash. So we will get started with that. Share my screen here. One moment. Okay. I think that should be good. Let's see if I can. Good. There we go. So, John, you're able to see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it just gets covered up with this meeting is being recorded.
You might just have to click on the OK button there.
Me or you?
You.
Okay. What's that?
Here, I'll be right there.
Okay. Yeah, you've got a. Oh.
There we go.
Well, hello, everybody. It's kind of scary, actually, but I guess we'll try to plow through it. As most of you know, this exhibit at MAC now is every tree has stories to tell, and I picked 5 species to have in the exhibit with the help of Lori and lots of other people to make it a show. And those species were birch, basswood, cedar, willow, and finally ash. And I chose ash tonight because I don't know, I guess it's a pretty sad story. It's a wonderful tree, and it's if you haven't heard yet, it's perhaps on its way out of Minnesota and the United States. Yeah, I can read one thing that came from Kelly Church. She's a Native American basket maker over in Michigan, and this was her assessment. The emerald ash borer was introduced into the U.S. in Detroit in 1992. Thousands of ash trees died before the insect was discovered in 2002. The emerald ash borer is emerald green with a copper colored underside. It is now in over 23 states, plus 2 Canadian provinces. The U.S. Department of Agriculture predicts that almost the entire ash resource in North America will be decimated by the borer. In Michigan, she stated that we have lost over 500 million ash trees alone during this 10 to 20 year period. So it's a serious problem. And so what I have to run through quickly first here tonight is a presentation that Brian Palick put together just to talk about what the situation in Minnesota is right now. And so I am no expert on this, but you can read along with me, and we'll work through this quickly to give you an idea of the picture as it exists today. So the first slide: widespread vulnerability of black ash wetlands from the ash borer. And the concern is that the wetlands are threatened by the borer and also by climate change. And the need is to maintain trees and associated ecosystems so that these areas that are currently forested don't become just wet grasslands. So next, here's a map of all the dots that you see on there are where the borer has been busy. You can see the Minnesota area up to the left and towards the top of the screen. There aren't any dots there yet. And then also over in Maine and northern New York State, but pretty much any place else that there are ash trees, they've been infected, and many, if not most of those, have died. So next, do I press something? No. Okay, so here is just an idea of what the insect does. It basically, gets in under the bark and moves around and basically girdles the tree and prevents any moisture, nutrients, and that sort of thing moving from the soil into the tree. And so the concern is 90% mortality of the trees over 1 inch in diameter, and that all native ash species are susceptible. Black ash more than any of the others. And right in our area here, we have two major species, black ash and green ash, and then also white ash is in Minnesota. So we're set to lose those 3 species. Next. Here's some idea of where the black ash, the main part of the black ash is in Minnesota. There's 1.2 million acres, and on that land there are approximately 1 billion ash trees. And it's unbelievable to think that almost all those trees are going to be dead within 10 or 20 years probably. And you can see some of the values from this. We'll talk a bit later about the basketry and the wood resource for the arts and that sort of thing. And it's a very important wildlife area. So it tends to be almost the only tree species growing on those sites because of the soil conditions. And so once that tree is removed, there's very limited tree resource left to take its place. Next one. So where does it grow in these areas? The one area that I always think about, for those of you that have driven from Cohasset to Deer River, over a long stretch of that road, both sides of the road are pretty much pure black ash. So you can imagine what that might look like in the future. And So those are the large areas, and then a lot of small ponds in forested areas, which are kind of ephemeral. Sometimes they dry up, mostly during the summer, but they're wet in the springtime. And then along streams and rivers. Next one. So where does it currently occur in Minnesota? You can see the area around St. Paul, down kind of the state border, over into Wisconsin. Wisconsin has quite a large activity of the borer, and then there's a little spot up around Duluth. That's the closest it is to this prime, so-called prime area for ash species in Minnesota. And then the other issue that's going on is, we have, and one of the things that has partial control over the ash borer are cold winter temperatures, and we're losing those. And I don't remember the exact temperature that that's the problem, or the savior, I guess, for us, is something above, for a certain number of days, above 20 or 30, colder than 20 or 30 below zero. And we don't get those that much anymore, but I guess for the sake of the ash tree, we hope for more. And then you can see down at the bottom there, the Itasca County, I didn't realize the temperature increase had been that much over this long period of time, but it's warmed up considerably, that's for sure. Next one. Black ash is called a foundation species, and that's because it pretty much controls the structure and function of that black ash ecosystem, that since it's basically the only tree on the site of any size, that's the issue. Next one. So here's the concern. Without the black ash trees, the wetlands get wetter. Sedges and shrubs, non-tree species dominate, and trees find it difficult to become established, and they basically become just wetland areas. And the hope and the need is to develop strategies that keep forests on these areas and keep them in the landscape. So next, here's some ideas that are thought about, but not much has been done yet. These are just different ways of managing the dominant trees on the site. But the problem is that once the ash borer hits, the existing tree species are gone. So the prospect for black ash replacement is poor, because their other species just have a difficult time in those conditions. So one of the thoughts is that we need to try and establish other tree species in those areas, and with hopes that they'll partially take the place of black ash. Next one. So here are some of the species that they've tried. And one of the ironies of this whole thing to me is this American elm. American elm is one of the tree species in Minnesota that was almost wiped out by the Dutch elm disease back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And they have, through work with genetics and that sort of thing, have developed some trees that are now resistant to the disease, and they were a fairly common tree on these wet sites. So that may be one tree that will help us out. And then there's oaks and some of the others, but you can see many of these others are this graph here shows the percent of trees alive after 8 years. So there's still a long ways to go. And the next. So to kind of summarize, that quick overview, black ash is this foundational species in northern Minnesota or northern forest wetlands, and very important in maintaining that structure and value. And with the widespread mortality comes loss of habitat and ecosystem function. And strategies are needed to keep these areas forested. And the hope is that they can find species and get them established to take the place of the ash, of black ash and the others. So in a quick nutshell presentation, that pretty well tells us what the situation is today. And the borer is dormant now, and I guess we wait till next spring to see what comes, many insects there are to start this process So that with that, now I want to go to the talking about the tree and where it grows and how it's been used over time. It's really a very interesting tree species. And for basketry, one of the most interesting things is that it has I have a picture around here someplace. Can you see this? Close or not? Well, anyway, the thing that makes black ash particularly usable is that it has a wood structure like this one here, which is called ring porous. And what that means is that in the early part of the growing season, these large cells that carry water and nutrients up the tree are formed, and they're weak. They have very weak walls, and so in order to what can be done to make basketry material is you take a big hammer or back of an axe and pound on the tree, and it breaks those big diameter cells, and you end up with this sort of material. This is one annual ring of growth minus the this is just what's called the late wood, all those small cells, and it's the strongest part of the annual ring. And this is what the basic raw material is for ash basketry. So once this is separated, well, let's go through the process. It's you kind of go out into the swamp or ash stand area and search for trees that have certain ring characteristics, and usually you use an increment borer or just do a slight chop into the tree to check out the width of the annual rings, because you want them to be, oh, maybe about the width of a quarter in order to be wide enough to use in basketry. So once you find those trees, they have to be cut down and hauled out of the woods, which is a chore for sure. But so you have this material, and then once you get the tree out of the woods, it's how do you separate the layers or the rings from one another? And it's just a process of at least in the older times, of just taking a big hammer or the backside of an axe and pounding on the wood. And because in doing that pounding, you destroy that area with the large annual rings, and you get all these either each annual ring from various years of the tree. They come off like this. And this one is pretty thin, actually. So this wouldn't have to be treated anymore. But if it's a wider ring, like shows in this bunch of rings, what you need to do is actually by hand, you can split that ring. I started this the other day. You can split it out. So that's the basic material you have to start your basket with. And if the ring is wide enough, you can continue to split it. I split this down instead of 2 into 3, and I might have been able to get a fourth piece out of it. And so these materials, the big question about how the ash borer is going to affect our ability to have a basketry resource is whether or not there's some way that at least for a while the materials can be harvested and stored and saved. And I've heard of a number of different ways that people have been trying this. And it seems like the most popular one is just to do exactly what I did, is particularly with this. With just each annual ring, you can dry them out, save them, and put them away. And I've been told, that these will last in this condition for decades. It certainly doesn't solve the problem of losing the ash tree, but it does allow for this basic raw material to be available for basket makers. So that kind of brings you up to the other before I go on to how we use that material. It's also possible to get weavable good material from the bark of the tree. And here's some pieces. This is the whole bark layer here. what you do is you're able to take the bark off the tree. It's a very simple process. Just make some shallow cuts in the bottom, and you can fold it up and I use small black ash splints to tie up the sides, and then you can decorate it with a handle or whatever you want to do. Or you can turn it inside out and make this folded basket sewn together with black ash pieces. So this makes it inside out, and that the outer layer that you see on the tree is there. And then the other way, which I kind of like to fool around with, is to cut the bark to remove that outer corky layer, and then cut the bark into strips and weave it, and it makes kind of a sturdy, nice basket. It does shrink up because when you have to weave it wet, and you lose some of that tightness. And then the rim of the basket is black ash, and it's sewn together with black ash splints. But that pretty much covers what you can do with the bark. So probably the most, at least to me, the best known of the guess I have to show you this way. Things that are made from ash are the black ash baskets and pack baskets. They're just a nice, beautiful piece of work. This one is pure ash, and it's just a matter of you can make different shapes, different sizes, obviously, and this was made by Nate Johnson. He lives over in Dora Lake. But that's it still is a very popular thing that people like to make from that. And you can kind of add some different species. A friend of mine that kind of got me interested in knowing more about black ash. It was a Native American guy from New York State, and he was a very good black ash. He is a very good black ash weaver. And so one day he told me to give him a bunch of birch bark, then he'll make a basket. So the uprights here are black ash, and the weavers are birch bark. And he told me he called this his Mopo basket. It's a Mohawk Pollock basket. And anyway, I find it really interesting to mix some of these barks and woods up just to show how you can make a little bit more diverse basket from this. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that you've got this really kind of normal standard wood that we make the baskets and stuff with, but for one reason or another, I don't think anybody knows exactly why or what the process is, that you get a lot of wood that has some very different character to it. And probably the most interesting are the burls. Katie told me I could lift this thing up and show you the burl. before I'll try that. I don't know. Oh, I lost something here, Katie.
Okay, it's just like a power cord.
Oh,
You're fine.
It's got power.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So can anybody see that? Can you see it,
Yep.
Katie?
Down just a little bit more. There you go.
Okay. So anyway, that's an ash burl, and you can see the annual rings on the tree. I counted this one. This is about 50 or 60, and it grows much faster than the rest of the tree grows. And so this, as I remember, had 70 or 80 annual rings, and this was actually younger than the tree, but it grows a lot faster. So these are kind of a prize for carvers and all. So that's a burl, one type of burl anyway. And then there's another couple other types of burls. The one that's kind of most interesting is now that that burl that I just showed you kind of has the normal annual ring structure, makes a new ring every year, and it's just that it's sort of up and down on the tree as opposed to horizontally when in that condition. But there's another kind of burl that I call an eye burl. I don't know if there's a better name for it or not, but it has some of that ring structure that you saw on that other one, but what it really has are all these eyes. And what these eyes are branches that grow within the burl, but they're suppressed, so they only grow up to the bark layer, and then they're suppressed because of hormones and other materials in the crown of the tree that dominate the growth of the tree. And so it just every year it just grows a tiny bit and then it stops growing. But if the crown of the tree were to die or whatever, some of these buds would be released and they could go on and I guess replace the part of the growing part of the tree that has died or been removed by storm or whatever. But this piece was actually turned by Bob Carls. I don't know if you know Bob Carls. He's got Ripple River Gallery. He does just absolutely beautiful work with burls and any other material. And then here's another small ash burl that was on the tree like this. And Irv Berglund, a friend of mine in the cities who does a lot of carving, he cut this off. You can see how it was on the tree like this, and then he carved out the inside, and you can really see the annual ring structure on that tree. And then there's this kind of pattern here. You know how a tree, the main trunk of a tree will grow up and then it will split into a couple of major growth. This patterning in is what occurs in the crotch of that split. I don't know, what all the anatomy involved in it, but it can be a really kind of interesting different wood structure than on the others. And so that kind of covers that. Here's one more, same sort of thing. But these are the kind of the more prized woods for character carving and that sort of thing. But the more common style of wood is, I've shown you the backpacks, but it goes, let's see. I've got some baskets of different ages here. These baskets, as near as I could find out, were probably made in the 1930s or 1940s. This has really interesting swing handles on it. And I don't know if you can see the way they develop these handles here, but I thought it was kind of interesting. They just, soaked them up good, and then they actually turned it and brought it back up over that. And this is quite a beautiful basket. This is one of my mother's baskets. She was a big collector. Here's a different type of handle. It's a swing handle again, and this is on what they call a pie basket. And so it has 2 layers. This is a separate basket here. You can put 2 pies or whatever it is that you're interested in carrying. But these are old-time, old-fashioned baskets. And as we move into this era, now the baskets tend to be smaller and to get fancier. Here's a basket that has black ash, but the other thing, which is really a common material in these baskets, is sweetgrass. And this one is quite old, so it doesn't have a really good smell of the sweetgrass, but it's nicely made, and the lid is pretty much all sweetgrass. And then you can see how the sides and the bottom are a mixture of the sweetgrass. And here's a really interesting ear of corn basket, I guess you could call it. All these little turns and everything, and then this comes off, and it's just really a delicate, nice piece of work.
Could you hold that up just a little higher, John? There we go.
You see that now?
Yeah.
Like that? Yeah. See it again. And then there's all kinds of different shapes. This was meant to be look a bit like an acorn. Oops, darn, that's not good. Anyway, here's a fairly old basket that was made by an old-time logger and log cabin builder in Big Fork. The story is that he'd spend the winter making baskets, and then every spring people knew when he was going to sell, and the crowd into wherever it was that he was selling, and he'd sell out his baskets in a day or two, and that'd be the end of it. And then there's let's see. Oh, here's just another. It's kind of a small carrying basket. This was made by Sid Rommel. He was an old-time forester in Grand Rapids. And this one was made in '92, so it's about 30 years old. This other one was about 50 years old. I think that pretty well covers it, except there's two other baskets that I have here. How are we doing for time? I guess we're okay. These two baskets were made, you see, these are made by the woman whose quote that I read earlier, but these two were made to compare what she feels is the future of black ash basketry. This is beautiful basket made with lovely splint. This basket here, she calls her 7th generation basket. And what she means by that is this one strip of ash here is all that you'll be able to use on a basket when that time comes because of the death of the tree. It's kind of a sobering thing to think about, but that was her view, and she's a 3rd or 4th generation basket maker. Let's see, I think. Oh, more very important things. 2 things. 3 things actually. If you like snowshoes, this is a beautiful pair of snowshoes Nate Johnson made. And what's interesting about this style of snowshoe is where you make this curve in the shoe. It's very important that you not cut across annual rings. If you can picture that, the annual rings are all running up this way, and you don't want to cut across because that makes a weak point. And in heavy use and stuff, those will just start to split out on you. So it's kind of a delicate thing to make sure that you handle this just right when you're making that cut. Yeah. This is, you can't probably see these very well, but this is a pair of black ash skis that Mark Hansen, he's the fellow that started the North House Folk School in Grand Marais. And I was with him on a ski trip, camping trip a long time ago, and wasn't with, he didn't make this pair, but he cut down it was a birch tree actually, and he made a pair of skis on that trip, and he skied out with his homemade skis that he made during the week or 2 that we were there. So it's quite a, they're really beautiful skis compared to these things that we get nowadays that are made out of plastic and stuff. And then one final thing that is kind of fun. My friends in Alaska, when I contacted them and told them what I was trying to do, one person up there runs a big program called the One Tree Program, and it's all about birch. But they make charcoal, and so I sent samples of all 5 species up to them, and she made charcoal for me from them. This, whatever it means, I'm not sure, but this one here was the black ash charcoal that I've been fooling around with. But it was just kind of an interesting use of the wood. And there's this the page just kind of gives you an idea of the process where you kind of cook the wood in a hot fire and you make the charcoal.
Just a little higher there.
Just a little higher.
There we go. Yep.
So that I think that sums it up. if anybody has any questions, or comments, or darts to throw, that'd be fine too.
So much, John. Yeah, folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. We've got time. So thanks again for joining us. And while we're waiting for you to formulate your questions, just want to say thanks to John and thanks to Lori Jacoby and to all the other artists who contributed work for this exhibit. And a big thanks to the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council for providing funding. John got an individual artist project grant through them that helped to support the exhibit and continual publication. So yeah,
Yeah,
so I'd like
I
to
will.
thank them.
Yeah, I will add that every Friday at noon from now until the exhibit is over, I show up here and happy to show people around, talk about any of this stuff. So if you have the time or interest or whatever, I usually start just at noon and run for an hour or so. And happy to get your comments and talk in more detail about some of these materials.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question. This is Brian Ryla.
Oh, hey, Brian.
Do you have any premonition about how long it's going to be that Itasca County's ash trees are free from emerald ash borer?
I don't know that that's ever going to happen. As long as there's trees there, the borers will stick around until they're all gone. The thing I've been wondering about is what happens when, enough of the trees are gone that the borer can't support itself anymore. I guess that's seems to be a question that nobody can answer either. So
they're not here yet, are they?
well, they're not, there's a spot up just north of Duluth.
Right.
And down around the cities. I've heard, maybe folks that are in the cities know that I've heard that there are active process of cleaning up and getting rid of the infected trees. So, but so far as I know, there's none in Itasca, Cooch, or St. Louis counties, which are the kind of the heart of the ash in northern Minnesota. And well, even in the country, actually, the number of trees that we have in that kind of three county, four county area are probably the most of any place in the country, actually, from what I've been told. So
well, it's a nice presentation, John. I appreciated it.
yeah, well, thanks for listening.
I have a question for you. I'm Carol Hepokoski. My husband was John Berquist, and he might have talked with you at some point when he was doing folk life and folk art work.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't paying so much attention all the time, but I'm wondering how to identify a black ash basket. And I have the feeling that this might be a very simple one.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. You would need to, I'm just trying to think of, where do you live?
Evelyn.
Evelyn?
So I could bring it over some Friday when you're there.
Sure.
Okay. There was also a very large pack one.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that sure looks like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I feel like I'm learning quite a bit and I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening. Yeah.
My name is Mara Kusera. I grew up in International Falls. And I had an interest in listening to this lecture that you gave simply because you were talking about the black ash. And as you were talking, I realized that I have quite a few baskets in my collection, and I want to show you a couple that I have from very northern New York. And I think, and these were ones that I collected in the 70s.
Mhm.
And I think that, I mean, they're wood. This is the cover of one.
Yeah, sure looks like it.
And how, you know, this one has a loop to take the cover off. This one is like a multiple loop. I
Mhm.
have some price tags in here. This might have been $4
Yeah.
in the middle 70s. And it was from the St. Regis Reservation, made by Mary Adams.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was the Malone Extension Center in Malone, New York. In one of these baskets and some other place I have, the Christmas decorations were 40 cents a piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess what I just realized now with your talking is, you know, I've had these baskets for such a long time, I've taken them for granted, and I really do have a treasure.
I think so. It's been interesting. There's a really active and powerful group in this ash basketry in Maine. They're called the Maine Indian Basket Makers Association. And it's been, you know, just really fascinating to watch the way their product, if you Google Maine Indian Basket Makers Association, you can see their work, but their best weavers, it's hard to believe. I just read something that the one guy said, well, he had been selling his baskets for $20,000, but he decided that wasn't enough, and he's raised it to $30,000. And you know, I mean, folks around here figure, well, you know, I'll get a couple $100 for this or something like that, and so yeah, and I should, you know, for those of you that you know, really, you know, might want to have baskets identified and everything, I mean, you could contact me, but I've got a really good friend that's a really good basket maker, and he was from that northern New York area, and he lives in the cities now, but you know, he'd be another person to contact about figuring out. But those baskets that you just showed certainly look very much like these baskets that I was showing you. Yeah.
That's what brought to mind what I had, so I thank you. And I have to ask you, how much longer is this exhibition up?
I think it goes, well, Katie can mention.
It's up till November 20th.
Okay, great. I mean, I live currently in St. Paul, but I go up home, as I call it, to International Falls on a monthly basis, and I guess I could make a detour via Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the gallery is open Mondays through Saturdays from 10 to 4. So
10 to 4. Okay, but it's on Fridays.
Fridays at noon is the the guided tour. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Appreciate everybody who was interested, and if you've got time and interest, it'd be great to have you visit the gallery here.
Any final questions? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to make one further comment. You mentioned Bob Carls. I have several of his pieces that he's made over the years as well, and they're fine pieces to have in one's collection.
Oh yeah.
So thank you for mentioning him.
Yeah, he's super. Plus a really nice guy.
Plus, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie and John.
Thanks, Donna.
I'm so sorry.
Glad you could join us. All right. Well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, I guess I'll release you all. Thanks again for being a part of our evening. And yeah, be sure to check out the exhibit, Every Tree Has Stories to Tell, up at MacRostie Art Center through November 20th, or on our website at macrostieartcenter.org. Thanks, John.
Good, thanks.
Yep.